Hello everyone, this is Jeannie from Historic Sotterley. Thank you for joining me today. It's 2 o'clock Thursday, so thank you for joining me. I am coming to you from the Red Room in Sotterley's Manor House. It's sunny outside right this minute, but it has been raining basically all day where I live until just a few minutes ago. But I thought the what Sotterley calls the Red Room would be a good place to do this presentation, and I'll walk you around and show you the Red Room, how it looks and how it fits into the subject today. So thank you for joining us. If you please comment, react, talk to each other during the presentation, that is all fine. The more you interact, the more we like it. Ask questions. If you have a question that can't be answered in a simple comment, then you're welcome to email me at education@sotterley.org. Catherine Humphreys is standing by to greet you and to take care of you online there as you come in. If you miss a section, this is recorded so you can go back and see it again, or if you have to step out and you miss part of this, it's no problem at all. So sometimes I'll reintroduce myself just to say hi to latecomers, and so they know what's kind of going on. Today, I am sitting in the Red Room, but I'm going to change my view because I'm sitting in the Red Room looking out the window and seeing the Patuxent River to the water. So you don't have to look at my face all day. I'm going to change the orientation, but welcome everyone. I see you. Angela and friends, it's scrolling by. So welcome to the program today. So I'm going to switch my orientation. This is looking out the Red Room window at the Patuxent River. You can see we're on the portico side looking out, right? So we'll take a tour of the Red Room too when I'm finished with the subject matter at hand, because I think it fits right in. So the title, Forgetting Our History at Our Peril. Sometimes we can be trite about saying, well, if we don't know our history, we'll forget it. It can become trite after a while and meaningless. So I wanted to dig a step deeper today. It's not just about knowing historical facts and knowing what happened when. It is that perspective we talked about before of knowing why people did the things they did at the time, what motivated them, eyewitness accounts, firsthand narratives, things of that nature that help us do a well-rounded, inclusive history. I know that, I get nostalgic. What is nostalgia? Well, it's that nostalgia is an emotion, right? Many historians don't really count nostalgia in their historical accounts. They think there's no room for it, but there are works out there. So I gave you two resources, and these are heavy reads. These are social science basically books, but one is called Nostalgia Now, Cross-Disciplinary Perspectives on the Past and the Present. And I thought that fit Sotterley perfectly. Sotterley is full of nostalgia, as we know. And the other one is basically a sociology textbook on power in society, an introduction to the social sciences. So these are not beach side reading. Probably they're a little bit more in depth and talk about use sociology and anthropology terms. And these are good reads, and especially I liked the Nostalgia Now, because it was a collection of different scholarly work put together in a book about nostalgia and its place in our society. Being at Sotterley, which is got so much nostalgia attached to it, I thought this was be a perfect time to talk about it. So knowing the facts, like knowing slavery was an economic system, and knowing when emancipation and what Juneteenth's all about, that's all really great to know. But a lot of people know all these facts, but it doesn't change their behavior, or it doesn't change their hearts. So what's missing? What is missing? And I think this might be a clue to a missing piece, this nostalgia topic. So there is, nostalgia is an emotion. And the term was coined in 1688 by Johannes Hofer to describe homesickness. Okay? Sometimes when we leave for school, or we leave our house for a long time, we get homesick, and that was, when they were studying it, they treated it as an emotional or a physical ailment. But typically we think of nostalgia with happy feelings, don't we? Who is a nerd like me and watches all those Time Life things with the old songs in it? The commercials where they're trying to sell you a CD, and you just want to hear all the songs from your teenage years or your childhood. Who does that? Anybody else do that? I'll start clicking and I'll find it. Oh, I have to listen to all, because it reminds me of the songs that I heard, when I was a teenager or a young girl, or that my parents listened to. So it brings back some pleasant feelings usually. Sometimes they might have a sad attachment, but most of this is good to remember. But nostalgia does have another side to it. I know that my own parents, they look back at their childhood in the they were teenagers in the early 1950s. They got married in the mid 1950s. But they remember their childhood village in the 1950s as a wonderful time to grow up. I mean, that is how they describe it, a wonderful time to grow up. But, they were in a rural area, and they're white, right? So the 1950s probably was not pleasant for everyone. So that's not where they would go back to if they were trying to think of something nostalgic. Sometimes, don't we put a luster on the past. This is human nature. This is we're all do this. We remember our past, and I know I do it with my own childhood. I remember the past and put kind of a lustrous sheen on it to make it seems, how I remember it sometimes, better than it really was. Now I have no problem, because I have that type, where I don't mind remembering the bad stuff because I think I need to, and thinking about the bad stuff. But you think about the good times, and you think about all of that happening. But there has to be a balance, because sometimes we can make it affect our future and keep us from changing. but we put a luster on the past, the same way that Herbert Sotterley, when he came from New York and bought this place in 1910, he put his luster on it, didn't he? He was looking for a time period where he saw it being what America should strive for and go back to. And nostalgia can also be crippling in that we're always thinking the past was either better, and so it affects how we think about the future and the present. So nostalgia also connects us to our past and present. So we think of these, we know that we had bad times in our past, and even in general history, there was, we went through wars and revolutions, but we kind of fill it in with all the good memories that we had around it. But sometimes that can, it can connect, and it's totally natural to connect our past and present. But sometimes it severs our past from our present, which is not that good. We can be nostalgic in a group about certain things. I know that I have friends who have talked about, African American friends who have talked about their time in segregated schools. And they felt like they were supported and comforted, and they had a lot of their elders to lean on and their teachers, and it was they were held to a strict standard, and they think about this time fondly. But what happens is, especially to African Americans, is one little piece of happiness or contentment can be turned around by someone else into thinking, oh, then segregation was really better then, right? No. But that's how sometimes nostalgia can trip us up. No, it was not better. It's better to have equal opportunities, but some aspects were better. It's like when we're describing slavery and from the master's point of view, they're happy because, why? Every once in a while they take a little joy from their children or their family life or what they're passing down. But, and the master comes up with they're happy in their situation. Well, no, that's not how humans work, right? You can be happy and sad at the same time, right? We can be happy and sad at the same time. So this nostalgia thing, it's also tied to our search for utopia sometimes. And one of the authors of the nostalgia book coined the phrase retropia, like utopia, but retropia. What humans seem to always be looking for the magic pill, the utopia here on Earth. Well, of course, my worldview says there is no such thing here on Earth, but it might not be your worldview. I'll remind you. But looking for that utopia, although just because nothing probably will ever be perfect in our world does not mean, see, this is where people take off on tangents, does not mean that we should not make it the best world that we can make it when we're alive here on Earth, right? So, humans tend to go to these extremes. So nostalgia is often used, and if you read some of these books that I recommended, you'll see that nostalgia is not as compatible with politically left thinking, but it's very compatible to populist thinking. And you can turn on the TV right now and see examples of what I'm talking about. Nostalgia can be healing, but it also can be, as I said, it can hinder you from seeing what's really happening. Even if you have a history degree, you know, I've seen history professors actually say things like, well, you know, we can't tell how they felt about that, so we can't say anything. Well, you can kind of make a guess in their actions and their behaviors how they felt about something. That's usually how we feel about something, usually drives our behavior, correct? So I think the world is kind of moving away from that, because I can't believe that all history teachers have failed. I just think we're leaving out something. We're taking the human out of our history. And taking away someone's nostalgia is a serious thing. And you see that also. Populist thinking, you see, why do politicians put the American flag behind them? And there's whole marketing things to do with all of this. You have it down, right? Play patriotic songs. Talk about, the good old days, or the way, if we could only go back to, or it's worse now because we're doing this. I mean, this is nothing new in history either. I mean, all through history, even if you go back to ancient history, Roman history, they're already saying it was better in the old days. Even back then, the older Rome was better than the newer Rome. So right after, a few hundred years after the invention of writing, you have this looking back to nostalgically to the past. So how do we deal with this? Well, so I know that Sotterley, when we went through the reinterpretation, this was a big thing, because Sotterley has a lot of myths, and a lot of the tour was built on nostalgia, on this idea that we forget to look at the flaws of the founders. We forget to look at what made them tick. We dismiss the idea that owning other people was a moral choice. It wasn't just the way it was back then. It was a moral choice to do so. And those kinds of nuances, I think, is what is missing in a lot of places when we talk about this. It's not as, we hope it's as simple as learning our facts and getting them right, but humans aren't simple, are they? They are not. So, what kind of nostalgia, think about it and you share with each other, what kind of nostalgia do you have? What do you think about fondly, either from your childhood or from history? What do you consider the good old days? Do you hear your parents or something to talk about their past nostalgically, and somehow wish it was more like that then? A lot of that is around technology right now. Those that couldn't make the transition, or have a very hard time making the transition to all this technology. I understand your pain, trust me. A lot of, and social media, it's the downfall of everything, but it can hinder progress, this nostalgic look back, instead of being kind of put into perspective and put into, this is part of the continuum. You know, my children who are in their 30s, one's almost 40 next month. You didn't hear me say that. You know, have a different perspective. I think my son can remember when there were no home computers. He's the first one that we had one when he was small. But you know, my daughters were born when computers were in the household. So so that makes a difference in, you know, going. And a lot of times, you know, we say we want to go back, like sometimes I'll hear someone say, oh, we want to go back. Wouldn't it be nice to go back to, say, the Victorian era or something? And I'm thinking to myself, no, I like penicillin, and I like that I don't have to die in childbirth. As you know, people don't have to die in childbirth. I like vaccinations. So, no, see, we tend to forget about those kinds of things. And this time we're going through right now, with a drastic social change happening, hopefully, and for the better. And for the COVID-19, you know, we're getting an overdose of change. So it's really rocking some people's worlds, really, probably including ours a little bit, right? So it's forcing some social change, and I would be so fascinated. That's why you need to be writing your stories down now, people, about what's happening toward your perspective. I tell my children this too, because they're going to be able to draw back on this time to talk about it to their children and their grandchildren. So write that stuff down. So nostalgia. I mean, we look back at sometimes nostalgia, you know, but it's human, and everybody does it. Nobody's immune to nostalgia. You know, we look back and we think about a pleasant memory, but there can be hang-ups with nostalgia if it severs you from reality, or severs you from what's really happening, or it makes you pessimistic and depressed. You know, you can live in the past so much that you're depressed about the future, or you're scared about the future. That can be damaging too. So I just wanted to talk about this knowing your history, and that's important. I had you know, back and forth on Facebook, I see some of my friends on Facebook kind of doing their inner search, their inner thoughts, and they are bouncing it around, you know, their Facebook friends, and talking about what they learned about history in school and comparing. This is all great stuff, by the way. This, you know, this kind of thing is worth looking at. Where are the holes? Where do I have holes in my knowledge? But remember, you're always learning. Lifelong learning, lifelong learning. Never stop learning. You can never stop improving. You can never stop seeing things from a different point of view and being okay with it. That's part of a critical thinker, and that's part of growth. We don't want to get stuck. You know, you know, I've known women too who, you know, wear the same hairstyle as they did when they were young, which I think that, you know, because that's how they remember themselves when they were young. And so, but now it ages them. You know, some of my kids, at least one of my kids has tattoos, and I have nothing against tattoos, but as a mother, I frowned on, but I can't do anything about it now, right? They're of age, whatever, I'm okay with it. It doesn't really bother me anymore. But I tell them, with those tattoos, people are going to be to tell when you were young, when they fall out of fashion again, so you got to watch all those permanent things you do to your body. But that's just me, that's just me being a mom. But I recognize that things change, and sometimes you have to kind of change with it and grow and change. But I really am, my Facebook page, my Facebook interactions, I'm really noticing people thinking about stuff right now. Like they're looking at it. But the hope is that will continue, and that it will just get more, people will just get more involved in examining their own thinking and their own upbringing to figure this out. Nostalgic. So what did you all come up with? I saw something going around about Loving Elementary School, Gina. It was the 60s was amazing, a fun decade. Yeah. Oh, what I love to do is, when this song that's popular now comes on, I love to tell my grandkids, sorry to disappoint you, but that's a remake of a song from the 70s. I love to do that. So nostalgia, good, bad, yes. So I'm so definite on that, right? It can be good, but it can be not good for us sometimes. So I hope that I just started a discussion that maybe you'll think about reading. I think you can get these books either on Google Books or Amazon. You can get, there's digital versions. So if you feel like reading, I really was fascinated with the nostalgia book. I had read the other one before, but which is a very good read. You need to read it. But the nostalgia book I thought was fascinating. Why do I? Because it brings back good memories. But we have to remember that usually what we're remembering is we're not remembering the bad stuff that happened. Usually, we're remembering the good stuff, and we're not remembering everything that happened. And it's our own perspective, right? My mom and dad's 1950s is not everybody's 1950s, and we have to remember that. But studying the history into more of a what makes people tick. So I love to talk about, World War I, World War II, all, the tanks and the guns, but I'm more interested, and that's just me, but it may be you, maybe not, but I'm interested in who's flying the planes and who's driving the tanks and what makes them tick. What brought them to this situation? What's their life at home like? Whose loved ones have they left at home? What kind of attitude do they bring to the battlefield that shades what they're going to do on the battlefield? Those are the kinds of questions I always like to ask. So just saying, learning our history, as Joe McGill, I saw one of his posts from the Slave Dwelling Project, I saw one of his posts yesterday, and it said in his post, it says, if you don't learn history, blah, 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 this is literal, blah, 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 blah. I just had to laugh because that is so Joe McGill. It's like we can learn our history, but we have to learn from our history, don't we? It's a little more involved in that. He was saying, we learn our history, but we still repeat, racism evolves. So that's another good point that I'm so glad he brought up, because it's true. We think when Barack Obama was elected president, we're done. No, we're not. I mean, racism can go, and segregation even can go into hiding and come out, name something different, right? It looks good on the outside, but really it's trying to separate people. It's trying to categorize people. It's offering certain opportunities to certain people. So we have to be diligent about that, because I see that happening sometimes in the school systems today. Well-meaning programs, but who is actually getting to take advantage of the program? What do they all look like? We have to think about those things. Is this just another way to segregate within the school building? I mean, we seriously have to think about those issues and make changes where needed, because that definitely can happen and does happen. So, I remember junior high school, right? In 7th grade, and I thought she was a good teacher. She was my social studies teacher. But one of the first things she said that I know is wrong now is that, the Civil War was not about slavery, and she was adamant about that. I remember that like it was yesterday. And all the kids were like going, huh? We were like puppy dogs with our head tilted, that wasn't computing, because that's not what we heard before. But that just goes to show, how, and I never really truly bought off on that part, because I didn't agree with it. But wow. So this is all, sometimes we have to go back, and who's interpreting the history, and is it nostalgic? Is it some fantasy? Like even just saying things like the United States, and I'll get in trouble for this one, but was based on godly principles. Okay. I believe in God wholeheartedly, but the United States was built on making money, land, power, and making more money. The founders, even though they might have had a belief in God, Thomas Jefferson was a deist. I mean, a lot of them, that God was not what they were thinking about. And equality had a different meaning back then. Now, this doesn't mean that we can't take these lofty ideals and make them a reality now. But, that kind of altering history, nostalgia, like if we only were back when our basic, when somebody gets up and said, I want to get back to the basics, my radar always goes up. They're going to say, because they're going to say something I don't like. They're going to say, we need to go back to this and what we're doing, no, that is, hi John, good to see ya. Glad you're here. So that is something we need to look forward to, this nostalgic thing. It can be good, it can be bad. And history, just knowing the facts, isn't enough. We have to dig deeper than that. And as I was reminded, racism wasn't. I don't remember talking about in that same 7th grade class. I do not remember talking about anything to do with racism. Did I really know what the word was then? I'm not sure. But I don't remember any of that. So these are the kinds of things that have to happen in our education. the examining their people's lives and going deeper than just facts. So that's really what I meant about at our peril, because we do have to know our history, but we have to examine the history the way it really was, as close as we can get it. Some things we just don't know, and I am adamant about, if you don't know, don't guess, and don't say something off the cuff that you're not sure about. If you don't know, say so, because somebody will know. I am one of those people that if I'm trying to do something new and I have a problem, I think, oh, somebody else had this problem before, so I'm just going to find out who has already solved this problem, and then I don't have to deal with it, right? Because usually the problem has been solved. Nothing new under the sun kind of thing. But do not use that as an excuse not to make the world a better place while you're on it. Okay. I'm going to now kind of move around. I'm going to move from the beautiful view out the red room, and if we have the light, hopefully we have enough light. Not open to the public yet for tours, but this is a perfect room for this. So this is a print of a painting of George Washington. Herbert Sotterley had so many, and excuse me if you've seen this tour before, and I'm going to repeat something, but George Washington prints, Herbert Sotterley has so many we can't hang them all. But this is George Washington, a family portrait, and you can kind of see in the background George Washington's manservant. And these kind of portraiture like this gave a message that the enslaved were part of a family. So most of these, what I really rocks my boat, I really love this. Okay, most of these prints were Herbert Sotterley's, trying to go back to an era when there was a white ruling class, and all the founders and George Washington, patriotic, and when things were nice and orderly, right, and everybody knew their place. But the original of this was actually painted right before the Civil War. I love this about Sotterley. So I'm in an early 18th century room, and talking about Herbert Sotterley, who was here in the early 20th century, trying to interpret Sotterley and the revolution and the federal period and the colonial period, okay, with a 19th century painting. Don't you just love that? I think that is awesome. It blows my mind here. So you're jumping around all of these eras in American history to try to interpret one, and you've skipped around 3 centuries, right? That is so amazing. And here's just one. I thought we would add the owners of, this is some owners of Sotterley. This is Walter Briscoe. Down at the bottom is James Briscoe, and then his son James Jr., and that's Elizabeth Briscoe Cashner there. So Elizabeth was hiding upstairs, and I thought she needed to be down here with the other owners of Sotterley, right? Of course she does. I think that's a lovely picture of her. Of course, this is a banjo clock from commemorating the War of 1812. That's Herbert Sotterley's. Here's another one of these paintings. This is a print, but it's also valuable because we have a color copy and the key that goes with it, because this painting, it's called Martha's Court. It looks like it's got George and Martha in here, but it looks like it's an English court. So this is once again one of Herbert Sotterley's prints from the early 20th century that he purchased and put here. It was actually painted. The original is painted right before the Civil War. Okay, but he's evoking a time when there's a white ruling class, right? Once again. So awesome. I mean, I just think that is so magnificent that it goes back and forth through history, this nostalgia thing, right? And the important thing is what do we learn from that, right? The important question. What are we learning from all that? What does that tell us? So maybe you can give me some answers. What does that tell us in relation to what we talked about today? So here's another one, of course. This is Lafayette and Washington, and you've got the women doing traditionally women things and kids playing out. There's a worker back there in the background you can barely see. But this is one that's used sometimes in our old interpretation about Sotterley looking like Mount Vernon, but I already covered that, okay? But I'll repeat it. Herbert Sotterley made Sotterley's house look like Mount Vernon, not the other way around, okay? And then we have, this is one of my favorites. I'm going to walk over here. Oh, I lost connectivity for a minute. I'm sorry, I'm back. So this is, you can see the glare though, but this is Martha and George courtship. And of course, Martha Washington, that's where George Washington got his wealth, right? Martha Washington was twice as wealthy, had owned 300 people of her own, only 300 slaves. So he married up. So it follows along with Sotterley's theme of women owners, or the male getting his inheritance from his wife's property. So that's one of my favorites because it follows along with women's history and the kind of dispels some myths. And of course we have step back a minute. We have the portraits of the Briscoes up, back where they belong, right? So Walter Hansel Briscoe and Emmeline Wilmore Dowlam, right? And we see the woodwork has been restored. They did a wonderful job. John did a wonderful job restoring the woodwork and the paint. And it's all glossy because that's the way it would have been, right? Glossy. I love it. It adds a lot more light to the room, I think. I love the glossy paint. Takes a little bit to get used to, but yeah, I love it. All right. So here's the other side. I'll go to this is one of the rooms where you can see both roadside, riverside. So this is pretty out now, of course. It was raining when I first got here, but give it 5 minutes and the weather will change, right? Isn't that a pretty view out this window? So pretty, right? So nice. And I get people coming in and saying, oh, I would have loved to live here. Well, it depends on who you were. See that nostalgic, it takes what does it take to have a house like this? Well, you have to have a lot of people to take care of it, right? The land and the property. Can you do all this by yourself? No. That's why these big houses and big estates are in financial trouble all the time because, the kids don't want it. You have to have. It reminds me of the movie, one of the adaptations of Little Women. It says you have to have an income just to heat the place, and that's almost true here, right? Right? So, that's why we don't see as many anymore. And green space, we'll talk about that another time, but I think next week I'm going to talk about green space. So stay tuned next week. I'll be back on next week, Thursday at 2 o'clock, so please join me then. And thank you all for joining me today, and have a blessed week, and stay well and safe. Bye-bye.